The year 2022 is a year the Ukrainians will never forget in their history as a nationality. Ukraine, one of the emerging and developing economies in Europe and Central Asia. February 2022, the Russian government threatened their territorial sovereignty by invading the country in order to frustrate their ambition of joining the Western Defense Alliance NATO. The attack was in violation of the fundamental tenets of international law of the United Nations Charter, mainly the commitment to refrain from the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of member states, also breaching the 1994 agreement, which was signed shortly after the collapse of Soviet Union. In that agreement, Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal to the Russian government in return for certain assurance. You see, in 1994, Ukraine only demanded for security assurance and that the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Russia will pay attention and respect its independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and there will be no use of force or threat. This agreement was called the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurance. Same in 2004, event repeated itself. Russia broke the agreement by sending duty agreement to Crimea. This action led to the independence of Crimea in 2014. The event led to the first breach of the Budapest Agreement, and the Ukrainian government declared their intention not to renew the treaty in September 2018. In 2019, Russia and the Ukrainian government renewed the treaty. Well, the content of the treaty was to ensure their citizen rights and freedom, on the same basis to provide for its citizens as prescribed by the international treaties, and the agreements include the inviolability of borders of countries. I guess the series of attacks and violation of treaties from Russian ends forces the Ukrainian government to look for a safe haven under NATO. On the launch of the invasion on 24th of February, Putin told the rest of the world that the Russian aim in Ukraine was to protect people subject to 8 years of bullying and genocide by the Ukrainian government. You see, if you could wind back history, you will all know that the February 22 Ukraine invasion was in retaliation to the 1962, whereby US and its allies prevented the Soviet Union from building its military base in Cuba, preventing Russian spy and attack on Europe. The Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 was a major direct dangerous confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union, and one of the moments when the two superpowers came close to nuclear conflict. In 2001, Putin ordered the evacuation of Russian military in Cuba, where was once an important spy base, and possibly the end of Russian presence in Cuba. The question is, if US and its allies fought hard to see that the then Soviet Union did not build its missiles base in Cuba, why on earth did they feel they could bring in Ukraine to become a member of NATO in order to build that military base in Ukraine, which shared direct border with Russia, and expect Russia not to resist this plan? Before invasion, Ukraine is considered as one of the emerging and developing economies of Europe and the Central Asia. Inflation was just about 9.2%. Presently, inflation in Ukraine is expected to be around 22% on average all through the year. Similarly, year before the invasion, unemployment rate was just around about 8.8% on average. Presently, unemployment rate is about 30%, and followed by World Bank projection, unemployment rate is expected to reduce to 28%, which all depends on the aggressiveness of the war. Because of the war, over tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians have lost their life and been displaced. Since World War II, Europe has never encountered this serious refugees crisis. The invasion has caused the largest refugee crisis in Europe. About 1/3 of the 44 million Ukrainian population have been displaced. Over 8 million are refugees in European countries and about 6.5 million within Ukraine. Its labor supplies has been reduced by over 14 million people. Projection for recovery and reconciliation needs across social productivity and infrastructure, over $400 billion is needed, which is far more than half the size of the Ukrainian pre-war economy in 2021. As the Ukraine and Russia war continues, the global economy, the Russian economy, and the Ukrainian economy will keep experiencing a downturn. Virtually every country across the globe is feeling the heat from the Russian invasion. Across the globe, virtually every country is experiencing high rate of inflation in the commodity and energy market as a result of the war. But the impact of the war on Ukraine economy is nothing to talk about. Large number of its citizens has become refugees in other countries. Believe me, large number of these citizens will never return to their homeland again. The war has shattered the Ukraine economy. More of its territories have been captured by the Russian army. Nevertheless, the Ukrainian military are becoming more aggressive, recovering more territories initially captured by the Russian army with the help of the military equipment donation from European nations. Before the invasion, Ukraine net earnings is about 68.2 billion US dollars, but in 2022, its GDP contracted by over 30%. Ukraine's agricultural sector suffered severe damage as large swaths of its arable land have become minefield and scores of its grain silos across the country has been destroyed. Farmers losing access to credit, seed and fertilizer, and in the occupied areas, their harvest has been looted by invaders. According to Food and Agriculture Organization Corporate Statistical Database, Ukraine was the fourth largest exporter of corn and wheat. You see, this was about 10% of the global wheat export and the world's largest exporter of sunflower oil. The war has disrupted its agricultural export process. Its other exporting goods include such as ferrous and non-ferrous matter, fuel and petroleum products, chemical, machinery and transport equipment to other countries. Exports report has claimed that Ukraine economy contracts by over 30% at the end of 2022, with the expectation it will experience minimal growth of about 0.3% in 2023. Large of its company are terminate operations while some has relocated from attack-prone areas to a safer haven. With shrink economic activities, business and social activities continue to downgrade as a result of power shortage, infrastructure attack, high production costs, and low purchasing power of its citizens. Attack on a steel mill and blockade seaport has reduced its steel export by a great percentage. Its largest oil refinery base in the city of Crimea was destroyed by Russian missiles in March 2022. In November, Russia hit Ukraine gas production facilities, depleting the natural gas reserve. February 24, 2023 will mark 1 year the outbreak of the war. Global community is calling on a ceasefire for the general good of mankind. We join the rest of the global community in calling for ceasefire, for normalcy to return to the once emerging and developing economy in Europe and in Central Asia.